So my name is Kelvin. I graduated from McRoberts last year, and Swiss Looney asked me here to talk a little bit about engineering and that kind of stuff. So just out of curiosity, is there anyone in this room that's actually interested in going into engineering?
I'm going. I'm ready.
Yeah? Okay. So hopefully we'll get some more hands up by the end of this day. So just a little bit of background about myself before I begin. Why did I pick engineering? So at McRoberts, I went through 5 years of like tech ed and stuff. I was in industrial design for all the 4 years, as well as the robotics program for the longest time. As you can see, it's a couple more projects that we did here. Did you guys do the candy grabber project this year as well?
We did that last year.
You did candy grabber?
Yeah.
This year? Last year? Oh yeah.
Yeah, so then that's the same project, and then the bomb, not the bomb bot, what's that, the sumo bot or something?
That's the soccer bot.
Soccer bot, yeah. So then those projects, it's like stuff like that that made me realize that, hey, I really like working with my hands, I really like building stuff, maybe engineering is right for me. So what was it like to study engineering? In a lot of respects, it's very, very similar to industrial design. You have little projects that you make. So this is my team for one of the projects that we got, which was a launch project. And it's, as you can see, our final product was a lot like something you'd build in industrial design. You get a little piece of plywood, you get some budget of like $50, and then you make a launcher that can launch a little projectile to a certain distance. The only difference is, compared to industrial design, engineering is a lot more rigorous. So basically, every single decision that you make, you have to justify somehow. So why did you use this certain kind of joint? Why did you choose this spring over another one? And with that comes a lot of academic rigor, unfortunately. So, you're saying that now. This is your typical schedule of an arts and science student. So if you're going into sciences, if you're going into arts and that kind of stuff, that's what your schedule looks like. It's about 4 courses. If you go to the next one, that's my timetable. It's a little bit worse. So as you can see, that there is a lot of courses that you need to take in order to actually get the knowledge that you need to be able to substantiate the decisions you make, whether that be physics or like chemistry, get a little bit of everything, right? It seems like a lot, but from my experience, it's actually quite manageable. Sure, you can like spend all day studying, right? You spend all day in your room studying, aiming for that perfect A+ on every single one of your courses, but in reality, you're probably like burnt out and stuff. Instead, so that's one of the issues of engineering that I found during first year. So for example, my program, Engineering Science, started off with 300 people. Going into next year, we lost half of them. We have 150 people left in our program. Perfectly balanced, eh? And there's no doubt that it's not for everybody. But if you do manage your time wisely, and if you really feel like you're passionate about the subject, I believe that everybody, if they put a little bit of effort into it and again, manage your time wisely, everybody can do it. What's important more than anything, that I learned at least in first year, was to manage a good work-life balance, not to spend all the time studying and spend time with friends and that kind of stuff. For me, a big part of first year was also spending time during doing extracurriculars. So for example, this was one of the projects that we built for a 24-hour hackathon. It was a competition that was hosted by our school for the Biomedical Society at our school. And what it is it's a bracelet that monitors the skin temperature of a patient. So our design was for patients who have something called CIPA. It's congenitive insensitivity to pain and anhidrosis. Basically, they don't feel pain, they don't sweat, and they can't monitor their own temperature. So as you can imagine, if they don't feel pain and they can't sweat, a lot of them have heat-related disorders and they can't lead normal lives, especially as children. Imagine being a child and you can't run around because your parents are afraid you're going to heat and die. It's kind of an issue. So that's what we made in 24 hours. But if you actually look closely, a lot of these things that you can make, a lot of these things are what you can make right now. If you look, it's simply a buzzer, an LED, an Arduino. And if you look at the back there, that little green board, it's the exact same Bluetooth board that you guys use for your soccer bots. We developed a smartphone app to go along with it so that if the bracelet senses that the patient's skin temperature is too high, it sends a push notification to your phone, and that way parents can track their kids as well. So what I'm trying to say from this is that most of the technical knowledge that I applied in first year didn't exactly come from the theoretical physics courses or from the chemistry courses. It mainly came from industrial design. And that's a really big part of this. If you do decide to go into engineering, you'll already have a massive head start over your peers. Because not only are you able to like CAD and do all the technical skills of soldering, welding, but you also already learned in this class how to work in groups and how to meet tight deadlines. In particular, if you look at this, I don't know, does anybody know what this is? It's in the back room, I think. Magnuson's happy about it. This was the legacy project that Steven and I actually worked on with a couple of our peers last year. It was a little go-kart that we made with a 12-volt battery and a winch motor. Nowadays, I work on something more like this. This is this is Valerie. She's our University of Toronto Formula Racing car. Every single year, we make a new racing car completely from scratch. That means welding the chassis, building the engine from different components, and like layering up the carbon fiber wings, all that kind of stuff like that. We have a shop much like the ones we have here at school, where we spend most of our time and stuff. It takes us about 6 months to build the car usually. Design happens in the summer, where the design leads all like CAD up the designs, and then during the school year we actually fabricate the car ourselves. So this was this year's car. It weighs about 340 pounds, and it has a little Honda engine. That means it can reach about like 120 kilometers an hour. As you can imagine, that's pretty fast for something that small, right? So when your car is driving that quickly, you want to make sure it doesn't, start flying. You want to make sure it finds to the ground. You want to make sure it's able to turn. And that's what I'm responsible for. I'm one of the aerodynamic engineers for the Formula Racing team. And if you look closely, you see in the back and the front, we've got these wings here. And what they do is they generate downforce for the car to make sure it stays planted to the ground no matter how fast we're going. So a lot of the things that we do at school during our designs is simulations. So then this is an air tunnel simulation of our actual car. So as you can see, the red spots are places where we're generating downforce. And what we do is once we're finished CADing up the wing, we take it to our simulations and we constantly tweak the design until we find something that both maximizes the downforce while minimizing weight. So 2 weeks ago, our team actually drove down to Michigan to participate in the Michigan Formula SAE 2019 competition, which is an international competition with about 110 teams from a bunch of different universities. We were actually doing really, really well. We were in about 10th place during the main race. We beat Waterloo and we beat like UBC and stuff. Unfortunately, until our engine overpressurized and blew oil all over the track. And then we got disqualified and finished 48th. Yeah, a little bit of a difference, eh? It was heartbreaking because we spent an entire year working on this car and making sure that it was ready for the track, and then only to have it fail during competition. But nowadays, the team back in Toronto is still constantly working on the car. They're improving the car, and they're preparing it for our biggest competition of the year, which is Formula Austria. So what they do is they take the car, load it up in an airplane, fly out to Austria, and compete with a bunch of European teams, the best of the best in the world. And you might be thinking, man, I really don't care about cars. Like this doesn't apply to me at all. This isn't the only kind of design teams that you'll see in university. There's a lot of different design teams, whether it comes from if you like UAVs and you like rockets. The Toronto team, for example, is setting up a satellite in July that's going to actually orbit the Earth and stuff, which I think is pretty cool. If you like renewable fuels, I know the Waterloo team is doing a sort of solar-powered car. So they take a car, they load it up, they go to Australia, and they like drive across Australia only on solar power only. So it's design teams like this that really embody sort of like the engineering spirit, in my opinion. And if you like industrial design at least, I'm sure that you'll enjoy projects like this too. So yeah, are there any questions at all?
How many projects do you have?
How many projects do I have?
Yeah.
For first year.
Yeah, first year engineering.
So off the top of my head, I can think of 3 major projects that we did. We have this course called Praxis, which is very, very similar to industrial design. Basically, we come in and we get a project, and we have to build something that matches that project. So one of our projects was to create a launcher, like you saw at the very, very beginning of the presentation. But we also have projects with different classes as well. So for example, for our physics class, one of our projects was to build a cardboard bridge that would be able to withstand like 90 pounds. So we got a giant piece of mapboard, which is basically paper. And then we had to design a bridge that was able to withstand these 3 little model trains. And with that, when it comes to industrial design, I'm sure you guys all done like bridge projects, right? Before it would be something like you literally, you Google online, you see a couple triangles there, yeah, triangles are pretty buckle, so you put them in the bridge, right? Nowadays, you actually have to do all the force calculations on all the members, make sure it doesn't buckle, doesn't bend, make sure the glue doesn't separate, and it's in general a lot more rigorous. Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is the number one benefit you would get from taking those rigorous courses? I know you said something like, you know, when you're building these cars, the stuff you learn in like chemistry or physics or whatnot doesn't really apply, but like, what are some benefits of taking those courses?
Right. So then when it comes to the rigorous courses, the main like reason we take these courses is so that you get a better understanding of all the materials that are part of engineering. So for example, when we're talking about the car, right? Of course, we can think of it from a purely physics point of view, where we want to make the car, as sturdy as possible while having as much power as possible. But then you can also consider it from a materials perspective, like what kind of material can I use here that's going to be the lightest and the strongest. At the same time, you also have to consider how am I going to program this car so that if I hit the emergency shut-off switch, the car's actually going to turn off. So you see, like, everything you learn in school, all these projects that we're doing, we're applying what we're learning in school. And I think that's really kind of beauty.
How many different teams do you have in your front of the cars?
What do you mean by different
Like
teams?
how many different teams do you have like to build it? Like you have a mechanics team.
Yeah. So then, in terms of the engineering teams, we have a drivetrain team, which deals with sort of like the transmission, that kind of stuff. We have an engine team, which obviously deals with the engine. We've got the aerodynamics team, which deals with the wings, how the body is molded.
So it's like not just one team, it's like a multiple people coming.
It's a lot of people coming together. We have about 30 people on our team right now. And of course, we have like chassis, which actually welds the tubes together to make the car, electrical, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's a group effort. It's a team effort where we're all working together. Yeah.
What do you learn from engineering strategies?
I didn't take that course.
You didn't take that course?
I'm in engineering science. It's a different program.
What about engineering chemistry?
Again, didn't take that course.
Dynamics?
It's physics. Yeah.
What engineering field do you plan to go in?
That's actually a really good question because I don't really even know the answers to that question right now. So what's cool about my project, my program, engineering science, and like UBC has the exact same program. It's called engineering physics here, I believe. We don't specialize until third year. So most of the time when you go into engineering, you pick a specialty in your second year, right? With my program, what they do is in the first 2 years, they try to cram as much engineering knowledge into it as possible. So for example, in our first semester, we did 4 years of civil engineering. That way, when we actually choose a specialty, it's not your typical specialty. So we have biomedical engineering. One of the, something that I think should interest everybody in this room is machine learning. That's one of our specialties. You can also go into the math and finance department if that's the kind of engineering you like. For me personally, I think biomed or aerospace engineering would be. Any other questions?
Oh, in order to if you want to switch program, right, from computer engineering probably to computer science or as you said, aero engineering, right?
Okay.
What do you have to do in order to achieve that?
When it comes to moving between engineering, I know a lot of my peers, they found out that this program wasn't for them, so they decided to change it to different engineerings. And the beauty of the way that at least most of the universities does it is that all the courses are kind of shared. So even if you're taking let's say math for bio students, it's the same kind of math that's being taught to physics students. So long as your credits transfer over, you want to make sure that your credits transfer over, that way you don't have to repeat a year or something like that. But besides that, it should be a fairly straightforward process.
In terms of co-op and internship opportunities, what are some things you do on the job?
So as a first year, I haven't actually been through co-op yet. So I know a few of my really good friends. I have a couple friends at Tesla right now. For those who play video games, I've got a couple of people working at NVIDIA, the graphics card designers. And we have people working at the Canadian Space Agency, and a lot of people actually go to Bombardier for airplanes and stuff. And then besides that, there's a lot of startups that they go to as well.
Is there a
Also for the race car project that you did, was it belong to the mechanics courses?
So no, it's not tied to the courses at all. So it is true that most of the engineers in there are mechanical engineers, but there are people like me, Eng Size, or from other specialties that come in and help out as well. Yeah, go ahead.
For the race car one, was it just first years or first year, second year?
It's actually mostly it's all across the spectrum. So you have a bunch of first years who come in and they start off by doing a lot of fabrication. They go to the machine shop and they start like. So I should actually go into a little bit of detail about what you do when I say fabrication. So instead of taking like parts, pre-made parts, what we do is we get like solid aluminum chunks, right? Just pure stock. And what we do is we take it to, you see the machine shops, like the metal tools in the back, the giant mills and stuff. We take that and we make our parts out of that, and that's what most of the first years do. But it's all the way from first year all the way to fourth year. Fourth year is mostly focused on design. They're the ones who actually make, like design the parts in CAD for us. So, someone else have a hand up over there? Go ahead.
What are are there any robotic clubs, programming clubs, and engineering clubs in
Oh yeah,
Toronto?
oh yeah, lots. I think this applies for not only Toronto but every single university. If you like something, you'll find a club or an extracurricular club for it. So we have like Sumo Club actually at Toronto, which is a little club where you built a small little robot and you use it to wrestle with other robots.
Do you have to be an engineer to join an engineering club?
Absolutely not. So I'm going to use Formula as another example because that's the closest to me. For Formula, we have a lot of people on actually our business team. One aspect of it is making sure that we keep our costs down as well to make the car as affordable to make as possible. So we also have a lot of people from the Rutland School of Business there. And our team racing driver, for example, is a computer science student. So yeah.
Oh my god. So like, you don't have access to join those clubs, right? When do you apply for them? Do you apply from the you apply, like you like?
So it depends on from university to university. Most universities have a recruitment fair at the very beginning. It's kind of like a club fair after school. At the very beginning of the year, they set up giant booths and then they show all the different extracurriculars that they have. But even if you miss out on the very beginning, you can always drop. If you find like the club and you find that you're interested, always drop by. Like people are always looking for more clubs, right? So don't be afraid to go there.
Like not necessarily about the courses and that, but like who drove the car? Like how do you guys decide?
So we have 4 team racing drivers on our team for 4 different events. Our current main racing driver, his name's Roberts. He's Latvian, and he used to drive in Formula 4. So the man actually knows how to drive a car really well. Our secondary driver, he drove dirt bikes, I think, for all high school. And our third driver is a professional karter. So a lot of people have previous motorsports experience. But for example, it depends on your willingness, right? So if you're dedicated to the team and they need drivers, and it's very possible that you can talk to them and be like, hey, like I'm interested in driving, what do I need to do to get there? They might be like, oh, lose some weight and then, like practice cars, that kind of stuff. So you don't necessarily have to have a lot of like driving experience, but if you have the dedication to the team, they see that you come to meetings often, you spend a lot of time in the shop working on the car. Generally speaking, you want to drive not just for your own sake, but for the sake of like making the team better. Then you can always talk to them. That's stuff. And I'd just like to quickly point out, this stuff isn't only limited to like Toronto, for example. So like one of our main competitors this year was actually the University of Victoria. And then there were teams at UBC, teams at SFU as well, all coming out to these like competitions and stuff. So depending on like what school you go to, there's of course different teams, but it's university.
If you remember, what were the rankings? Like who placed first, second, third? Like how did UBC, SFU, or whatever?
The number 1 team was a team called TU Graz, which is a team from Germany. No, Austria. It's an Austrian team, if I remember correctly, that has only master's students. The secondary team that came in was Stuttgart, which was a German team, and then the third team was a team called ETS, which is the École like the technical school from. No, ETS Montreal. Yeah, so it's the technical school in Montreal. So a lot of different teams from a lot of different places. I think Michigan placed 3rd or 4th or something like that.
Is MIT or Harvard or any of those schools there?
For some odd reason, when it comes to the higher level IB American schools, most of them don't participate in these because they're more research focused, while the other schools might be more like fabrication focused. I know last year we had Cornell at our event. Unfortunately, Cornell did completely lose control of their car and crash it into a barrier and destroyed the car before competition started. So, yeah. It's dangerous. Any other questions?
Like one really weird question. So I'm international student, right? Is there a chance I can get into aerospace engineering if I'm international? Because like it's kind of like really, you know.
It is prestigious, but they don't discriminate based on where you're from. It's purely based on your academics as well as your extracurriculars and your admission. Like they don't really discriminate whether you're international.
Anyone else have any questions?
Just out of curiosity, who's in grade 11 here? Alright. So then this is the time to start thinking next year, you're going into grade 12. I'm sure you've already booked your courses, but next year application starts sometime in December. So it might be time to start thinking about, hey, is this a program that I want to go into, or do I want to go into something else?
Kelvin, when like what point in high school did you say this is where I'm going towards? Was that later half or from the get-go?
What year did we do the little cars, the cars with the air?
Oh, compressed air cars?
Compressed,
That's
yeah.
usually grade 9.
Then it might have been then.
Yeah.
I remember for that car, I spent a lot of time trying to get the weight as low as possible to the 75, 75 gram minimum,
Sure.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And it was that time when I was just spending hours and hours on the bandsaw, just making sure the cuts were perfect. Because I broke the car 3 times while making it, if I remember correctly. Ended up having to fiberglass the end of it because it exploded on one of the test runs or something like that. And it was at that time that I realized hey, I kind of like working with my hands. I kind of like doing this. Maybe this is something for me. And yeah.
Is there any friends in your circle who has started a company, well not a big company, but just a side business or something like that while they're studying engineering?
Yeah, so one of my really close friends right now is working as an engineer for this little tech startup. So what they do is they're making an app that basically, it's called gamification of running, technically. So what they do is they turn a fitness app into a game. So you compete against your friends, and I don't know too much about it, but I know that he's spending his entire summer coding this right now. They have $40,000 in venture capital right now. He's not getting paid, he's getting paid in stocks, but it's a startup idea that could really blow off, and within the next couple of years, if his company's worth $2 million, all of a sudden he's $500,000 richer. Yeah, and engineering makes good money. There's no doubt about that. Any other questions? No?
How would you compare computer science to computer engineering?
I'm not going to answer that question because you both are here. It's up to you guys.
Which faculty makes more money? Computer science or computer engineering?
It very much depends. Obviously, you have computer engineering as well, right? So it totally depends on where you're working, what you're doing. They're very, very interchangeable.
Is computer engineering more hardware focused or software, or around the same?
Computer engineering is definitely more hardware focused.
Oh, then computer science is just all software.
It's not all software, but there's a lot more theory to it. So you learn more about what kind of algorithms have what kind of time complexity.
Oh.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.